Welcome to Fitness Casual. We help you ditch diets and build habits no matter how busy you are, even in the summertime. I'm Andrew Hayes, and with me is the breezy Kat Best.
Hi, everyone.
How's it going, Kat? Do you have any travel indulgences when you're
Well,
traveling?
before I take a trip, I'm definitely buy at least like one new outfit or a new pair of shoes, new
yeah.
bikini. Like there's always something new. Typically, it's because I don't have an option for something I need where I'm going, but it's definitely like I get myself a little something before a trip, like 100% of the time. Actually, I like stocking up on travel-sized little things. Body lotions, like all of that stuff. Like I'll go to the store and just buy a bunch of travel size stuff, and I actually like enjoy that process. I find that fun.
I love that. I plus one to that. I think I also just don't buy a lot of stuff anymore, especially working from home. It's like
Yeah.
joggers and a t-shirt every day. And so then I'm
Yep.
like, oh, I need to dress up. Maybe I should buy something. So I totally agree. And then for me, I also love to splurge at dinners on vacation. And so I think I go out to eat a fair amount with kids and stuff, but I'm always pretty conscious of like, do I really want an appetizer? Is that just something that someone's offering to me? Do I really need a cocktail on a Tuesday, or is that just they're doing that because the margin is high?
Yeah.
Which we'll also talk about. But I think when I'm on vacation, I'm just like, whatever, it's like an extra
Yes.
$20 here and there for a dinner, like treat yourself. I really enjoy that. And my wife's in the same boat. So we really will ball out sometimes at dinner. I think a lot of people
Yeah.
do that, but it's a really nice to be like, this is not a habit. This is a once in a trip thing or a couple of times on a trip thing. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's always fun. Or getting coffees when you're traveling. I feel like that's
Yeah.
always fun.
That's
Like,
right.
Yeah, it's twice
That's
a
right.
day.
That's right. Yeah. Fun fact: we lived in Bend, Oregon, for a full month a couple years ago, and the Airbnb had like a really crappy coffee maker, and so we were planning the budget for the trip, and we had rented our house to help pay for the trip, and so we put into the budget that we could buy one coffee per day each for 30 days. So I just guilt-free was at the coffee shop every morning, became friends with the barista.
Nice.
But listen, if you have a budget, it's nice to be married to a financial coach. So anyway.
Definitely.
Summer shorts, we're keeping it simple and short because we know you're all busy and we know we want to keep the information succinct as well because you got a lot going on. So today we're doing travel snacks and a few hacks. Where do you want to start, Kat?
So when it comes to travel, and we're looking at this more from the lens of nutrition, not going to talk too much fitness, but I think travel brings up a lot of anxiety in people. So I just want to mention this is really also for people who are probably trying to make healthy habits, and when they travel, they feel like everything gets derailed. There's no structure, their routine, their foods they like, everything is thrown off, and that can actually create a lot of anxiety. So I think first thing to do is just have a plan of what your food situation will be. Are you in a hotel where you have no ability to make any food of your own? Are you in Airbnb where you have a little bit of an ability and you have a kitchen? Even if you're in a hotel, do you have a mini fridge? Those things can make a big difference. So you should have an idea also of what your meal situations are going to be. Are you eating all 3 meals out? Do you want to do an easy breakfast at home? Do you want to also rely on a collection of snacks for breakfast? I think if like I'm going to do dinner out every night, but I want to do something pretty low key for lunch and breakfast I'm going to have at home, now you have structure to know exactly what you need to focus on to stock up on. And I actually think like in a hotel with a mini fridge, you can do a lot as far as, stocking it up with like yogurts, hard-boiled eggs, super easy things. I think you should always do a Google search in the area of what grocery store or local market is around you, if there is one. Especially if you're visiting like a city or a vacation area, there's so many food places you can go just to get some simple groceries, even if it's a bunch of already prepped food, but that will make it so you rely less on restaurants and have a little bit more control. And I think a lot of people just don't take the time to just do a quick Google. I always like to see what's around me, wherever I am, just to see like where can I pop in and grab a few things. And I think if you make a plan on day 1 of your trip, wherever you are, to just try to gather some things, if you haven't, packed it with you, depending where you're going, if you're flying or not, I think that's a really good move. Not waiting until day 4, but if you do it right off the bat, or you're kind of like, I know what's in my area, or see what healthy restaurants are around you. Is there a smoothie shop? Is there like a coffee place where you can get healthy stuff? Like try to figure out where healthier things are, so at least it's on your radar. Even if you don't go to them, I think it feels good to know there are options around you, so you're not just looking it up in the moment you're hungry and need to make a choice, because you're probably not going to make a really good choice.
Yeah, grocery delivery is a great hack. If you are flying somewhere, I would say it's 100% certain that there is a grocery store on the way to where you're staying or near where you're staying. And so sometimes I'll just be on the tarmac waiting to get off the plane and I'm just firing up some groceries, especially with kids, like get the snacks they need, the string cheese, the yogurt pouches, whatever, to have those on hand, but also for yourself. And then if you're driving somewhere, maybe you're going camping or something more remote, but that means you are at some point leaving a destination with a car that you could pack a cooler. And so pretty much regardless of where you're going, unless you're flying to a remote destination in Bora Bora or something, if you are good for you, you can probably find groceries and even have them delivered. So it takes really no time at all to have that even in a mini fridge. You can put a lot in there.
Yeah, I love that. And I think airports these days are better than they used to be. I've still gone to some really crappy airports and I'm like, oh my God, get on the page of everyone else. Some are incredible. So I sometimes tell clients to, before you leave the airport, because on your way out, you walk past all those food places, grab some yogurts, grab some hard-boiled eggs, grab some bars, because that's all right there. Like convenience foods are right there when you're leaving. So if you don't think for the rest of the day you'll have options, at least you can have a bunch of snacks, even that are fresh, because you're just like getting them when you get off the plane, is a really good hack. And people don't do that because you're in mode of like, get me out of the airport as soon as possible.
Right.
But if you actually collect some items or hit up the Starbucks, grab some egg bites or something, that can be really helpful. But airports, I also think, are a place where people make excuses to eat really crappy food. Now, I understand there's a lot of junk at airports. There's also lines. Some places there really are no good options. But I really think there are decent stuff if you know what to look for, like fruit, nuts, yogurt. You can find, even places that have like little salads with some sort of protein. Like every time I fly, I think I'm more amazed with what good options there are. Yep. So just know that if you're looking for something healthy, you can find it. But if you're in the mode of like, oh, I'm at the airport, so I'm going to get a sandwich or I'm going to eat something junky because that's what you do when you're at the airport. Or if you start drinking at like 8 a.m. because you're at the airport, people do that. It's like 100% something people love to do because they're at the airport. Maybe, have a different plan in mind, but just know like airports are not an excuse to eat a bunch of crap. I think not eating at the airport is also a good idea. If you can eat before you leave, then you also can get to your gate like when the plane is boarding. You don't need to kill an hour, because if you have an hour to kill, you're probably going to go want something to eat, which is fine. But I think that's a really easy thing to avoid, is just trying to not eat at an airport. And I actually think sometimes for digestive health, if you don't eat on your flight, that's not a bad idea. Flights sometimes are really short, or like 3 hours or less. You like actually don't need to eat. It's a normal time between meals. But I think there's also something when you're on a plane and you have a bunch of snacks, you're like, I have to eat these snacks. Or like, I'm killing time, I'm bored, everyone else is eating stuff around me. So just keep that in mind too. If you have digestive issues or struggle with like inflammation from flying, try not to eat when you're on the flight if you don't need to, because you probably don't. Unless your flight is super long, obviously have something. But if it's not that long, I think that's something not to do that I would recommend. But drink a lot of water. Drink a lot of water. That can be really helpful because it's really dehydrating to fly.
Love it.
But I think if there's one food group a lot of people really struggle with when it's traveling, it's protein, because it's just less readily available. I would say like hotel breakfasts are okay, but they're usually like very shitty. Sometimes they'll have eggs and that's about it. But if you just focus on having a stockpile of protein options, I think that can be really helpful for you. And that could be, bars, deli meats. You can even buy, chicken breast at a grocery store, hard-boiled eggs, tuna packets. Like there's so much. So if you focus on protein,
it's very easy to find.
Yeah. Yogurt's so easy. And yogurt you can also mix with like nuts and seeds. You can add protein powder. You can do a lot with yogurt. Even like oats, you could make like hot oats are really easy to add protein powder to. So I think also, traveling with either protein powder singles or little, kind of make little baggies of single servings. You can do that for yourself. People are always like, I can't fly with powder, they're gonna stop me. I fly with an insane amount of powders, especially like my creatine is like little white baggies. Never been stopped one time. They don't care. They literally do not care about the supplements you're packing, but everyone's like worried about it. But trust me, like, and also if there's nothing wrong with that, you're not gonna get like arrested. So you're fine. So don't worry about that. But I know that's like a hang up for people. You would be surprised how much you can actually bring through TSA. When I fly, I always bring a meal with me. I pack it from home. I know maybe for people with kids, like that's not super reasonable, but I find it to be the easiest thing on earth for a travel day is to be like, I've actually packed my meals for the whole day and I'm good to go. No issue. Never had an issue one time, like getting through TSA. I think that's actually a really nice way to have control if you're worried about what options there will be. Or if you have digestive issues or like it's hard to find food that fit your diet or whatever, like bring your own stuff and then you know exactly what you're going to have. I think that's, really helpful.
Ascent makes the little packets that you
Yes.
mentioned if you don't want to make your own. I think it's like $50 for 15, which sounds expensive, but I just remind you when you travel, everything is jacked up. If you go to a hotel breakfast, like you said, the oatmeal's free. Throw $3 worth of protein powder in there. Now you have a really solid $3 breakfast, which is better than you probably would get at home. Or you can go to the airport, roll the dice, and buy some protein bar for $6 that has like 8 grams of protein. So sometimes
Yeah.
just kind of swallowing that pill, even though it's $50 sounds expensive, just remember how quickly this stuff adds up to try to find protein on the road because it's less shelf stable and often marked up will get pricey quickly.
Yeah, and go through the exercise of where are my meals going to be? What am I going to do for protein? Like these are things I ask our clients before they take a trip every single time just to make them think. And if the answer is I have no idea, it is what it is. We try to find solutions, but at least makes people think because it also makes people feel more prepared and then they're more confident going into something if you just have sort of an idea what you're going to do for each meal. For snacks, since I know snacks, I think play a more important role during travel, or if you're on vacation during the day, you're out and about, snacks can be really handy. So a few things to look for would be, I would say about 8 grams of protein. Snacks do not need to be a full serving of protein because that's what your meal is for. But if you want to be satiated between meals or not have like a big blood sugar crash, you should look for some sort of protein. So I would say maybe 10 grams, but I think 8 as a minimum is a kind of a good one to operate with. We want ideally minimally processed ingredients, so you should kind of recognize what's in there. Snacks run a really wide range of quality, but if you can at least identify what's in there and the ingredients list is on the smaller side, it's probably a good sign. Fiber is even better. Something to keep you full, helps you balance out your blood sugar. A protein and fiber in a snack can go a really long way compared to just eating a bunch of carbs or something that doesn't actually satiate you. And then last could be fat. So if it's like protein, fat, or fiber, all of those things will keep you full. I don't think looking for something that's predominantly carbohydrate is the best idea unless you have a good amount of protein there to help balance it out. So that would be, if you want to have an apple as a snack, I would say have some nut butter or some nuts with it. Nut butter, those little packets, those little squeezies, those are really good for travel. You can do all sorts of things with those. I think hard-boiled eggs are good, yogurt and berries. Little edamame packets, those are really good. And you can buy those at the store. I do think single-serve little packets of things is the way to go for travel, unless you want to make your own. I think if you put a giant bag of trail mix in your bag, you're going to eat 1,000 calories before that you did not need. You need the single serves unless you have an eagle eye for portion sizing, but I know a lot of those snacks really can be higher calorie and sneak up on you like without you realizing.
Yep.
Beef jerky can also be a good one, or like a meat stick. But if you bring around beef jerky, that lasts forever. I've had many a beef jerky meal when I'm traveling. It's like a bag of this and a little bit of that, and now I've hit all my protein needs. Like you can get a meal out of that. I don't think you should do that for every meal, but it's definitely very efficient. Starbucks sells turkey jerky. You can get jerky. I've seen it at any airport, kiosk. They have jerky. Like people are onto protein now, so jerky is really everywhere you go for convenience type things. So that's an easy one. I even think like bottled kefir, that could be a good snack that you can find like smaller amounts of that. But really those are just things that have fiber, so that's what to look for. If you are traveling and you're eating out more, I think that's the one use case where having larger, like one really big meal that you kind of splurge on, indulge in, and then have 2 smaller other meals or maybe 1 other meal and snack, I think that's actually a valid approach. That's really the one time I recommend it. I think if you get in the habit of doing 2 giant meals per day, every day, not the best, but I think when you're traveling and you're trying to also make the best use of eating higher calorie foods or indulging, but not having it become like too much of an overload, I think that's actually a good use case for it. But you also should be drinking a lot of water. I think those are the basics to look for.
I want to add one note to your point about snacks. We've talked a decent amount on the podcast about naked carbs. Generally, always good to avoid eating carbohydrates or sugar in isolation without a protein or a fat or fiber. Many, many reasons for that, too many to name. But it's a very common mistake, we'll say, on when you're traveling, because you're like, oh, I'm at the airport, I'll just grab some Cheez-Its or whatever. And like, again, there's a difference between choosing it because you like it and having it, with your yogurt, and just grabbing Cheez-Its because you think it's a meal. And so remember that there is a behavioral mental component too. I like the glucose roller coaster is the term that I like, which is when your blood sugar spikes too rapidly, which is what happens when you eat processed carbs. You get this almost like euphoria and energy, and then you have a sugar crash, right? We're all pretty familiar with that, but it also comes with mood changes. And so two things happen. One, adults, we grab the quick sugar and we're traveling, and so we're tired and dehydrated and we're stressed. It's going to compound. Like, you're going to feel like garbage is what I'm trying to say. But then also for parents, this is a mistake that a lot of parents made, and I have too, of giving your kid a ton of sugar, because you're like, oh, we're on an airplane, they're antsy, here's a lollipop, or, here's a bunch of Cheerios or whatever. Sometimes we're going to have to do that as parents, but don't forget that there is a glucose roller coaster with kids too, sometimes worse than yours. And what you'll do is you'll pump them full of sugar and they'll be euphoric for 20 minutes, and then they're going to crash hard, especially if they miss their nap time or they're dehydrated or whatever. You really need to be careful. Like, they will ruin your trip if they are just pumped up full of sugar. And so remember to avoid the naked carbs for those reasons as well. We always pack lunches now for our kids when we get on the plane, and they can kind of eat whatever, especially when we're on a 5-hour flight. I'm like, here's a screen, here's sugar. Like, I don't really care. Just let's get to the landing this plane. But I do make sure that they have some cheese and some turkey and whatever else as part of it, so they're not just miserable throwing tantrums in their seat, which could happen. I think a lot of people forget about the glucose roller coaster.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important, And yeah, if you also really put a lot of planning into what your kids do during travel, which I think parents do, like, put a little bit of that into yourself as well. Or like, what do you need? Do you have your snacks? Do you have your water? Because I know you're making sure your kids have what they need. So apply that to yourself as well, because, you're just as important. And you probably should just have the same things they're having, honestly.
Yeah, that's right. Order on Amazon or go to a grocery store the day before you leave. Get everyone's snacks at once. Love it. What else, Kat?
I think that kind of covers it.
Okay.
Know your surroundings, do a Google search in the area, eat healthy at the airport, and don't just go on the excuse of, I'm traveling, so all bets are off, and have no control, so I'm going to eat like crazy. Because if you just change your mindset there, you could have a really successful travel or vacation or whatever, and not really backtrack on your goals all that hard. But that's really like the mental component of making sure you keep yourself in check as well.
That's right. The one thing I'll add is we're really big on habits with how we coach, with the podcast, everything like that. Don't forget that sometimes your vacations are a habit, and sometimes it's a once-in-a-lifetime trip. And that will also impact your decisions. If you have a pretty normal-looking summer and you're going to work all the same, and your kids are at school or camp all the same, and like you have one weekend that you've been looking forward to literally all year, like, maybe you're going to splurge a little bit, and that's okay. But if you are traveling quite a bit, you're always on the road in the summer, or you're using it as an excuse to just completely fall off, then that would be a good time to be a little more intentional about your snacks, your choices, your packing, all of that. And so be kind to yourself. We're not saying you can never have fun on vacation. I think we're kind of saying the opposite. But you really need to learn how to travel with intention. And so, like, especially if it's a work trip, that's obviously going to continue to happen in your life. You need to build a habit for your work trip, because it happens quite frequently. If you're talking about a once-in-a-lifetime Caribbean vacation and you want to have a cocktail at 9 a.m. and it's the only time the other 51 weeks a year you don't, that's different. And so just decide before you leave, like, is this a habit? Is this something I need to build into my life, or can I take a few days off? Right, Kat?
Yeah, 100%. I always give our clients the option, like, do you want to track on this trip or do you not? I don't tell them what I want them to do, but I let them decide. And I would say it's 50-50. If it's business related, usually they want to stay on track. If it's family vacation vibe, usually not so much. So that context really does matter.
Love it. Great. Thus concludes our summer short. Let us know if this was helpful. Safe travels, everybody, and we'll see you for the next one. As always, you can find Kat on Instagram at CatBestWellness. You can find me at Andrew His Life. We will be dropping our travel snacks guide into our WhatsApp group, so make sure you click the link in the show notes to join our Ulta Life community on WhatsApp and get our snacks guide for the summer. Talk soon, everybody.